Hi, I'm composer and performer Mika Hyytiäinen.
And I am performer and composer Sara Albu.
If you're watching this video, you probably want to know how to read and write a Soune notation that I have developed.
I've never used Soune notation before, so this is new for me too. However, Mika has promised that it only takes a couple of minutes to learn. Let's see.
When I started developing a sonographic notation some 10 years ago, I was inspired by John Cage's piece Aria. Like the notation of aria and most classical notation, going up in the score means higher sounds and time goes from left to right, mostly in a roughly linear way. This is how Soune works too. In Soune, the pitches are not fixed to absolute notes, such as the middle C. Rather, the anchor points come from the voice or the instrument that will perform the score. So far, I have used the registers, if it's for a voice or a wind instrument, and the open strings, if it's for a string instrument. I inform myself of these and then write them as horizontal lines on the score. They fix the music the same way as the clef does. They can also be referred to using absolute pitches if other instruments need that. However, for Soune, the performer and the instrument are more important. Here you see one possible version of the open strings of the cello and the instrument's whole range. And here you see some registers of Sarah. The pitch to be performed is indicated by the bottom line of the graph. Here we have a line starting in the middle of the middle register and ending at the bottom of it. Usually, I like to emphasize the melody with a thick black line. The score specifies how long it takes to perform one page from left to right. Typically, this stays constant for the piece or section. At least to me, a good solution has been to use 5, 10 or 15 seconds per page. Let's use 15 here. Now we can listen to the first rather simple melody. If there is text to be performed, it can be written below the note as usual. Some singers have mentioned that it's difficult to read English or French words, for example, if they are spaced in a really artistic way. On the other hand, it's also a bit weird to read international phonetic alphabets if there is no context at all. As a result, I usually write the IPA below the graph, and in this corner, what words the IPA spells out. That is, if there are some actual words. If music needs to be synchronized, for example with other musicians or with video, you can create an animation which has a cursor that shows where the music is going, as we saw in the previous video example. On some occasions, this can also be done using a large-scale notation and a physical object, such as a hand. One further solution is simply using a clock for a synchronization. We see a couple of different options in the following scores. Above the melody line, there is a colored area, in this case in gray. The thickness of that area indicates the dynamic. The thicker the area, the louder the sound. During the whole piece, the same thickness should always indicate roughly the same dynamic.
Singing.
The colored area can also be used to indicate different timbre. My choice was grey, red, and this bluish green. For vocal music, I have used the following system for the metaphorical position of the voice. Grey indicates neutral, central, almost speaking position for voice. Red is more resonant position at the back of the throat, and green is nasal. For string instruments, I have used a similar system. Gray is the neutral position of the bow, red is sul tasto, and green is sul ponticello. There are also further effects that can be added to these colors. Adding white dots or adding white empty circles, for example. For voice, this means going from somewhat whispered to completely whispered sound. For string instruments, this means light and very light bowing. I can also add black dots or black circles on top of the color. This indicates different levels of groaning with voice or overpressure for strings. Of course, you can also use your own versions and add any further specification, either as a graphics or text. Pizzicato for string could be simply a text, or maybe you decide to use some circles for them. Congratulations! You have learned all the basic elements of Soune and can now write and read it. These were intentionally simple examples, kind of alphabets of Soune, so that you can make your own interpretation. And that is actually an important point. Even with totally classical notation, a lot of interpretation is needed. How free should it be? When I write music with Soune, I like to make it as systematic as possible. This means that a specific interval or duration is always indicated similarly on the score. If you still have a minute, here are some ideas that I have been experimenting with to develop Soune even further. When we were creating this simple body, Lisa von Hammer and Annika Fuhrmann were improvising with a printed Soune notation. And they decided to read some phrases backwards from right to left and intuitively sung them using an inhale. This can be an interesting impro technique, but I have used this technique also in some written scores. I like to use the symbol for up bow to indicate inhale. By the way, in this video, the cursor is made to look like the performer, and she turns for the inhalatory singing. These kind of ideas can be fun for performances where the audience can see the Soune score as a video animation. For example, in my piece Emote. This is a bit of a freer example of Soune. It is based on my piece Singing Trees. The idea is that the singer starts with this original score on the left, and then during the piece they can reposition these objects for a new composition. Obviously, in this case, the black melody line at the bottom doesn't work because we don't know what the performer will do with the pieces. Now you can have fun with Soune and find your own ways. One thing that I would like to experiment more with was notating laughter so that it doesn't feel quite as unnatural. This is what I did with it, but how would you do that? Sorry.
Sarah, you know now Soune for 1 hour. How was it, and what would you say to people who are starting to write or read Soune?
It does take a few minutes to get it, but it's quite intuitive.
Thank you.